We're not going to be able to do anything especially precise with the motion controls since I'm using a mouse and keyboard to get things done. The vast majority of things we need to do don't require precision, but still, that's going to be a bit annoying. Not much point in picking a me picture since I'm the only person using this emulated console. Why did they even do things this way anyway? Why not just have the player pick a name for the save file like plenty of other games over the years have done? Bit quiet compared to the other opening text bits from the other two Metroid Prime games. Apparently our blood pressure is not good right now. Is the computer going haywire to go with our nightmare, or is this just part of the nightmare itself? I'm not all that clear how Samus's technology really links up with her mind and body. It's something that feels like it changes when it's convenient. Anyway, this is essentially what we saw at the end of Metroid Prime 2. Dark Samus has not fully died despite being killed in a collapsing dimension. Well, the graphics have certainly improved in this game compared to the previous two Metroid Primes. Not surprising since this is on a new console generation.
All systems functional.
I would certainly hope all systems are functional since it's not like we're at a convenient dock to get some repairs if something went wrong.
Course laid.
Okay, I retract my previous statement. We're apparently closer to civilization than we've ever been before in this franchise.
Federation fighters approaching.
Well, it took them long enough to approach us, considering how close we are to their main fleet.
Unidentified vessel, please switch to a secure radio frequency and transmit your identity code. We are standing by.
Right, hold on. It's gonna take me a while to figure out how to work our radio on the ship. We're not used to having anyone to speak to in a Metroid game. Is it just me, or did one of those pictures look like a bored face and the other one right next to it look like a turd? There's not even symbols for a language, even if a few of those symbols looked like they might have belonged as a katakana or hiragana. Oh, well, at least we won't be seeing that all that much over the course of the game. But this is a very distinctly different opening for a Metroid game. And I've got to say, I'm hoping they don't make too much of this style of opening when they make the fourth Metroid Prime. Samus, I've done more than enough flying to know it's a bad idea to get that close to an engine if you aren't planning on blowing it up. Though considering the Wiimote controls, I can certainly understand why I'm not being given the control stick as we fly. Nice! We get our own personal hangar on the ship. No need to share with any generic fighter craft or transports. And as is series tradition, Samus discarded quite a few upgrades that we're probably going to have to hunt down in this game, and some that are going to be entirely replaced by other things altogether. Ah, well, at least we still have the familiar little jingle as we start things off, and we'll hear it some more as we load the game later on. Now, if you'll excuse me, let's start some scanning. The other two Metroid Prime games really did quite a job teaching me to really want to investigate anything and everything around us.
Please calibrate your weapon by shooting these targets.
Why do you want me to calibrate my weapons when I'm entering your ship to speak to your commanding officer instead of killing things here? I mean, sure, this game has a distinctly different control screen since it's a Wii game, not something with the kind of control schemes that easily translate to control pads or keyboards. If there was ever a time to pull out a tutorial, it's for such a massive change in the style of controls. But I am fairly sure that the tutorials you got in the old Bungie Halo games was better than this, since they fitted into the story more smoothly.
Calibration complete.
Was there a reason you were standing right behind the targets and risking getting hit in the face with our little plasma bursts? I mean, sure, this is the basic power beam, the weakest weapon that Samus has. Still, that's kind of a bit stupid and shaky. Trained for combat situations, and in this game, we actually get to see them try to hold their own more than in any other Metroid game. At what point will that control console be activated? And like with the other two Metroid Prime games, it's probably more my fault than the game's that I'm looking around and scanning so much, slowing things down by such a degree. Anyway, it feels like I've decided that this game is gonna get a mostly audio commentary, mostly because I've done audio commentaries for the other Metroid games so far. Why break the tradition? Okay, I'm not sure if it'd be easier for me to do the whole juggling thing with the actual motion controls instead of the keyboard and mouse combination. Not that there's really much point in me doing that little mini-game, much like there's not much point in me scanning so much before we move on. I'm just trying to get more comfortable with the control scheme right now before we move on to some actually combat-related stuff. And that's enough messing around here. Not that I was doing all that much especially active. Just barely moving my gun, and just timing when we'd hit the target that we were juggling around for the sake of gaining some points. Though apparently we would have gotten a little empty achievement marker thing if I'd managed to juggle things there for 10 shots, for whatever that's worth. Achievements were never a big thing in Nintendo games as they were for Microsoft and Sony consoles from this generation onwards. Granted, I'm one of the few people who don't like achievements and go out of my way to turn off the notifications for that sort of thing, so I don't really have an issue with Nintendo not really going for achievements for the most part, but unfortunately, there is no way to turn off the achievement notifications in this game, and they reset every time you start a new game, so it finds its own little ways to annoy me. I know, I'm bitching about things that aren't really that big of a thing right now. It's a little bit unfair, and that's all as I just keep scanning everything for the sheer sake of scanning everything. Seriously, I don't think we need to see the little Samus symbol every time we scan something important. It just somehow makes this game feel a little more gamey than the previous two Metroid Primes, from what I remember. Which is interesting, since this game has better graphics than those two, so it should in some ways feel more immersive.
Thanks, Samus.
you're saying thanks when we blew up something to fix a problem you were fixing part of the ship here for. I mean, sure, opening doors with gunfire is a pretty acceptable thing in this franchise, but I'm pretty sure an engineer would be at least a little annoyed that we outright shattered a section of gears. Yes, operating normally because blowing up a section of machinery is about the same as banging an old-fashioned tube TV to get things working, apparently. And it's not like the Olympus has taken any battle damage here. We only just got here. Nothing has happened. I am just taking an irresponsible amount of time just looking through every room in the ship, slowing down the start of the game quite a bit, and it doesn't have anywhere near the same ominous atmosphere as the start of the first or second Metroid Primes. Well, of course all systems are online and in good shape. The only issues on the ship are just standard maintenance crap that happens when things get old. Well, I'm sure if the ship took gunfire harsh enough to breach the hull, that door isn't going to survive a similar hit, so yeah, probably not completely indestructible. Well, that number certainly doesn't mean anything. It's just another excuse to have some motion control console operation to slowly get us used to the controls around here. But at least that makes more sense than the gunfire calibration thing earlier. Part of me can't help finding it a bit odd that you aren't allowed to repeat numbers for some reason. Okay, for some reason it took a bit of effort to get her hand to the right far enough to hit the enter button. Probably something to do with how the emulation is going. Bit annoying. Well, I don't. This is the first time we've had to go through this kind of thing in this franchise. First clip into this game, and it feels more like we're going through someone's fresh take on Half-Life than a Metroid title. Again, this is just the opening of the game, but it's odd for the final game of a trilogy to change things up this drastically from other entries in terms of narrative style and how they start things off. It's still recognizable as a Metroid Prime game with all the scanning and the visuals to a degree, though maybe that's my fault for doing so much scanning that it slows down the pacing by quite a bit, and we should have been much further on than this.
You may proceed.
Of course.
You'll need to pull that lever toward you to enter the containment area.
Sorry, having some trouble keeping track of what you're saying because I'm scanning absolutely everything all over the place. I appear to have a bit of an addiction caused by the previous 2 games of this series. Please send help.
Please step into the containment area to begin the security scan.
Is the scanner going to notice we're a player character or something that erroneous? I'm sorry, how are you scanning that we've got the right DNA sequence when we're in an armored suit that's rated to let us breathe in outer space and underwater? We are very much sealed up tight, even before we've gotten any armor upgrades of any kind. This is the only biohazard scan we're ever going to get in this game, since any further attempts require more motion control precision than I can pull off with this emulator. They are certainly throwing around a good number of unfamiliar terms, considering this is the third game in a trilogy. Space saved in crew support, but Samus gets her own personal hangar in the ship that has no other ships in it. Oh dear. Why do they need that kind of console communications instead of a radio when they're talking to someone else who's on the same damn ship? Anyone want to bet that there's gonna be an emergency before we leave this ship? Though I'm sure we won't see that emergency until the next clip, considering how slow we're being. I'm literally scanning everything, even the most self-explanatory stuff here. Again, it's my fault that the game is starting off this slow. Yet in the other two Metroid Primes, we generally get a kind of creepy opener, where it doesn't matter if we take our time. We are, an ominous situation where scanning everything really does help paint a picture of what happened. There is nothing ominous about the start of this game aside from the short nightmare cutscene with Dark Samus showing she isn't dead again when she failed to die several times in that very game. Well, that's a good reason to get through this room in a hurry. There's nothing to scan that we haven't already scanned. And now we have another room full of things to scan to slow me down even more. Bit of an odd design for the bridge of the ship. Definitely a lot of wasted space, even compared to things like the Star Trek and Mass Effect bridges I've seen over the years. I'm not too sure what they were going for. They claimed the Aurora unit thing made it so they didn't have to spend as much room for people, but this is a very wide open bit of space for a spaceship. I'm not asking for submarine levels of claustrophobia, but come on. What kind of military spaceship would have this kind of breathing room in a critical place like the goddamn bridge of the ship? I'm not comparing this to something ultra-realistic. Again, I'm comparing this bridge to Star Trek and Mass Effect. And this is just an obscene amount of wasted space.
Admiral Dane has ordered me to remind you that suit maintenance and data backup should be done before the meeting. There's a
Use that
recharge station on the other
code for
side of the
use the
walkway.
goddamn bathroom before we start talking to you so there are no interruptions. I have the distinct feeling that we're being subtly punished for taking an ice age to get to the meeting. But then, we still would have been told to save the game before the meeting, even if we rushed our way here, not scanning anything on the way to this spot. As first clips for an LP go, nothing really eye-opening, but again, I'm sure a good amount of the fault there is with me and my constant damn scanning. Hopefully business will pick up in the next clip.